Good evening and welcome to the channel. Tonight we are covering what may be the most consequential single day of this entire 10-day war. And I want you to understand right from the start why I am saying that. Because today, in the span of just a few hours, 4 things happened simultaneously that have fundamentally changed the nature of this conflict and what comes next. Iran crowned a new supreme leader. That new supreme leader immediately launched missiles. Russia pledged full military and political support to that new leader. And oil crossed $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022, sending global stock markets into a complete meltdown. And on top of all of that, Donald Trump, for the first time since this war began, suggested that American boots may go on the ground inside Iran. Every single one of those developments would be a massive story on its own. Today, they all happen together. So let us break every single one of them down, piece by piece, because the details matter enormously, and the picture that emerges when you put them all together is one that should concern every single person watching this video tonight. Let us start with the biggest story. Iran has a new supreme leader. His name is Mojtaba Khamenei. He is 56 years old. He is the second son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in the first U.S.-Israeli strike on February 28th, the very first day of this war. The Assembly of Experts, the 88-member body of senior clerics that is constitutionally responsible for selecting Iran's supreme leader, voted overnight to appoint Mojtaba as the Islamic Republic's third leader since the 1979 revolution. Iranian state television announced it in the early hours of Monday morning, and within minutes, the streets of Tehran were filling with people carrying pictures of the new leader. The IRGC, Iran's most powerful military force, pledged full allegiance immediately, announcing that its forces are ready to fully obey and sacrifice for the divine commands of the new supreme leader. The Iranian army, the police high command, the defense council, the judiciary, the parliament, the guardian council, all issued statements of loyalty. The speed and coordination of that allegiance campaign told its own story. Iran's establishment was sending a message to Washington, to Jerusalem, and to the world. This regime is not broken, it is not collapsing, and it is not going anywhere. Now let us understand who Mojtaba Khamenei actually is, because this is not a man the world knows well, and that unfamiliarity itself is part of what makes him so dangerous and so unpredictable. For decades, Mojtaba operated entirely in the shadows. He made almost no public appearances. He gave almost no public statements. He was the ultimate backroom power broker, the man who pulled strings without ever standing in front of a camera. But behind the scenes, his influence was enormous. He is believed to have deep operational ties to the IRGC's intelligence apparatus. He was widely seen as the person who coordinated the crackdown on Iran's protest movements, the brutal suppression of demonstrators who took to the streets demanding reform and dignity. CNN's analyst Karim Sajjadpour described the IRGC as the real power behind Mojtaba, with former IRGC intelligence chief Hossein Taib as an ideologically aligned ally. Sajjadpour said their vision for Iran is essentially a Shiite North Korea, a government which is deeply, deeply repressive, deeply ideological, and deeply militarized. Analysts across the board are describing Mojtaba as more hardline than his father, not less extreme. More extreme. One man in Tehran told CNN, and I want you to hear this directly, he said, people don't realize that this government could be more bloodthirsty, more cold-blooded. He said Khamenei, the father, was terrible, but people had gotten some freedoms. Now they are scared of what comes next. And within hours of being named supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei made his intentions perfectly clear. Iran launched a fresh wave of missiles and drones. Iranian state broadcaster IRIB posted a picture of one of those projectiles on its Telegram channel with a message painted directly on the missile. That message read, "At your service, Sayyid Mojtaba." Iran's new supreme leader was not inaugurated with a speech or a ceremony. He was inaugurated with a missile launch. That is the statement he chose to make to the world on his very first day in power. And Israel's response was immediate. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar told CNN that it is clear Mojtaba continues what he called the very extremist and mad policies of his father. And then he was asked directly, is Mojtaba Khamenei a target for Israel? Sa'ar paused and said, "You will have to wait and see." Arab officials told NBC News that Mojtaba now has an X on his back, marked like his father before him for assassination. This war did not create a leadership vacuum in Iran that America and Israel could fill with a moderate. It created a hardline successor who is more ideological, more connected to the military, and who started his reign by firing missiles. Now let us talk about Russia, because what happened today from Moscow is not a diplomatic footnote. It is a strategic earthquake. President Vladimir Putin sent a direct message to Mojtaba Khamenei, pledging what he called unwavering support for Tehran and solidarity with Iranian friends. Putin wrote that Russia has been and will remain a reliable partner to Iran. He said at a time when Iran is confronting armed aggression, Mojtaba's leadership will require great courage and dedication. That message from Putin to the new supreme leader on his first day in power is a signal that goes far beyond condolences or diplomatic formality. Russia has already been confirmed by multiple sources, including CNN, to be providing Iran with real-time intelligence on the locations and movements of American troops, ships, and aircraft. Putin is now publicly and personally backing the man who is commanding the military that is using Russian intelligence to target American soldiers. When Trump was asked about Russia's intelligence sharing earlier this week, he called it a stupid question. But it is not a stupid question. It is arguably the most important question of this entire war. Because if Russia is helping Iran target Americans, and Putin is now publicly pledging unwavering support to Iran's new supreme leader, the United States and Russia are not merely competing in a proxy conflict. They are on opposite sides of an active shooting war, with American lives in the crossfire. China also weighed in today, though in its characteristically careful way. Beijing said the selection of Mojtaba Khamenei was an internal Iranian matter, made in accordance with Iran's constitution. China said it opposes interference in other countries' internal affairs under any pretext, a direct response to Trump's earlier statement that the new supreme leader is not going to last long if Iranian leaders do not get his approval. Beijing has been urging the U.S., Israel, and Iran to return to negotiations and has criticized American military actions. What you have now is Russia actively backing Iran with intelligence and political support, China refusing to condemn Iran and criticizing America, and the United States and Israel fighting a war with no diplomatic off-ramp in sight. This is not just a Middle East war anymore. The great power dimensions of this conflict are now fully visible. Now, let us talk about what Trump said today that sent shockwaves through Washington and every capital in the world. For the first time since Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th, Trump suggested that the United States might put troops on the ground inside Iran. He did not give a timeline. He did not give specific conditions. But the suggestion alone from the commander-in-chief that ground troops are being considered represents a dramatic and terrifying escalation in the stated scope of this war. Ali Larijani, the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, had warned days ago that Iranian forces are waiting for exactly this scenario, that they would kill and capture thousands of American troops if a ground invasion began. Iran's terrain, Iran's population, Iran's Revolutionary Guard doctrine, and Iran's historical experience of asymmetric warfare all make a ground invasion an extraordinarily dangerous proposition. Military analysts have consistently said that airstrikes can degrade Iran's military capacity, but cannot alone achieve regime change. If Trump is now putting ground troops on the table, it means the war's objectives have expanded beyond what air power can deliver. And that expansion carries consequences that dwarf everything we have seen in the past 10 days. Meanwhile, Trump also responded to the naming of Mojtaba as supreme leader by calling it a mistake. He said the new supreme leader is not going to last long. When asked more directly what he meant, he simply said, "We will see what happens." That combination of vague threats and deliberate ambiguity is now a defining feature of how this administration is communicating about the war. Complete destruction, certain death, not going to last long. We will see what happens. These are not policy statements. They are psychological operations designed to create maximum fear and uncertainty inside Iran while giving the White House maximum flexibility to do whatever it chooses next. Let us now turn to the economic catastrophe that is unfolding in real time, because what is happening in the global economy right now as a direct result of this war is not a background story. It is a central front of this conflict, and it is affecting hundreds of millions of people who have never fired a gun and never will. Oil prices today crossed $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022. Brent crude, the international benchmark, surged to $119.50 per barrel before settling around $112. U.S. oil prices surged more than 30% in a single day. Over the last 5 days, U.S. crude is up more than 45%. Over the last month, it is up more than 60%. These are numbers that have not been seen since the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And many analysts are saying this could go even higher if the Strait of Hormuz remains choked and the conflict continues to escalate. The stock market reaction was brutal. Asian markets opened Monday and immediately collapsed. South Korea's Kospi benchmark fell more than 8%, with trading briefly suspended for the second time in a week using circuit breakers designed to prevent a total freefall. Japan's Nikkei 225 dropped almost 7%. Australia's market fell more than 3%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng dropped more than 2.5%. In Europe, the pan-European benchmark fell 2.34%, its third consecutive session of losses, following a 5.5% drop last week that was already the worst weekly performance in nearly a year. In the United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average opened down nearly 700 points. The S&P 500 dropped 1.4%. The Nasdaq slid 1.3%. Investors are not just reacting to today's oil price spike. They are pricing in the possibility that this war could last weeks or months, that the Strait of Hormuz could remain disrupted for an extended period, and that the new hardline leadership in Tehran has absolutely no interest in de-escalation. Bahrain's state oil company Bapco declared force majeure on its operations today, a legal mechanism that allows it to suspend contractual obligations because of extraordinary circumstances beyond its control. Bahrain's desalination plant was hit by an Iranian drone, threatening the drinking water supply of an entire country. Qatar's energy minister warned last week that Gulf energy exports could halt within weeks if the war continues. Kuwait has already cut oil production. Saudi Arabia's massive Sheba oil field, one of the largest in the world, has been targeted multiple times by Iranian drones. Israel struck Tehran's oil depots over the weekend, sending thick black smoke across the capital and creating what Iranian authorities described as an environmental alert. The Strait of Hormuz has seen traffic drop approximately 90%. Around 300 oil tankers remain anchored near the strait, unable to move. The global energy system is not under pressure, it is under siege. Trump's response to the oil price crisis was to post on Truth Social that the spike is short-term and a very small price to pay for eliminating Iran's nuclear threat. He wrote that oil prices would drop rapidly once the Iran nuclear threat is destroyed. He then added in all capital letters, "Only fools would think differently." His own advisors, according to CNN, are deeply concerned about the political fallout from rising energy prices. Some inside the administration were alarmed by the scale of Israel's oil depot strikes over the weekend, not because they oppose the war, but because the images of Tehran burning sent oil prices to levels that are causing real pain for American consumers at the gas pump. But Trump publicly is dismissing those concerns. He attended the dignified transfer ceremony for 6 fallen American soldiers at Dover Air Force Base over the weekend, described their deaths as inevitable, and then flew to a summit in Florida. The 7th U.S. soldier killed in this war has now been officially identified as Army Sergeant Benjamin Pennington, 26 years old, from Glendale, Kentucky, assigned to the 1st Space Battalion, 1st Space Brigade, killed from injuries sustained in an attack on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia on March 1st. An 8th American service member has also now been confirmed killed. 8 Americans dead. More than 1,232 Iranians confirmed dead. More than 400 killed in Lebanon. 11 killed in Israel. Let us talk about Lebanon for a moment, because it is easy for the scale of what is happening in Iran to overshadow what is happening in Lebanon, but the situation there is catastrophic. Over 500,000 people have now been displaced by Israeli strikes in Lebanon. More than 300 people have been killed. The Lebanese Health Ministry reported 16 more deaths and 35 more wounded on Sunday alone. Human Rights Watch released a report today stating it has uncovered evidence that Israel used white phosphorus in residential areas of southern Lebanon in violation of international humanitarian law. Hezbollah fighters clashed with an Israeli force that landed in the mountains of eastern Lebanon on Friday night. Israel killed the commander of Hezbollah's Nasser unit in an overnight strike. The Israeli military also struck near Tripoli in northern Lebanon. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said Israel should cease its operations in Lebanon, that its response has been heavy-handed, and that Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity must be respected. Israel is fighting on 2 fronts simultaneously, and the Lebanon front is escalating with every passing day. There are 2 other developments today that deserve specific attention. The first is the U.S. State Department ordering the departure of non-emergency government employees and their families from Saudi Arabia due to safety risks. The U.S. Embassy in Riyadh is now operating with a skeleton crew. The State Department has now ordered evacuations or departures from more than a dozen countries in the region since this war began. The second development is that Trump envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are traveling to Israel tomorrow, Tuesday, to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is being watched extremely closely as the first significant diplomatic movement of this entire war. What they discuss, what signals they carry, and what they bring back will tell us an enormous amount about whether there is any diplomatic track being quietly pursued, or whether this is simply a coordination meeting to discuss the next phase of military operations. And that question, is there a diplomatic track? Is there any path to ending this war that does not involve either the complete collapse of the Iranian regime or a catastrophic ground invasion? Is the question that every government in the world is now asking. The UN Secretary General has warned this war could spiral beyond anyone's control. Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi told NBC News Meet the Press that his country must continue fighting for the sake of the Iranian people and ruled out a ceasefire. The new supreme leader launched missiles on his first day in office. Putin has pledged unwavering support. Trump has put ground troops on the table. Oil is at $112 a barrel. Global markets are collapsing. 8 Americans are dead. More than 1,500 people across the region have been killed, and we are only on day 10. The question this war is now asking is not whether it can be contained. It can no longer be contained. The question is whether it can be ended before it becomes something so large, so destructive, and so economically devastating that the damage outlasts the conflict itself by decades. The answer to that question depends on decisions that will be made in the next few days by a new Iranian supreme leader who started his reign with a missile launch, by an American president who is now suggesting ground troops, and by a Russian president who has just pledged unwavering support to the side that is shooting at Americans. This is the moment the entire region and the entire world has been dreading since February 28th. We are in it now. Before I hand it over to you, I want to ask you 3 questions, and I want you to think hard before you answer. Question A, Mojtaba Khamenei is described by analysts as more hardline and more dangerous than his father, and he launched missiles on day 1 of his leadership. Do you believe his appointment makes a negotiated end to this war more likely or completely impossible? Question B, Trump has now suggested ground troops inside Iran for the first time. Do you think this is a genuine military option he is seriously considering, or is it a psychological pressure tactic designed to terrify Tehran into negotiating? And question C, Russia is providing Iran with American troop locations. Putin has pledged unwavering support to Iran's new supreme leader, and global markets are collapsing. Do you think the world is now closer to a direct confrontation between the United States and Russia than at any point since the Cold War? Drop your answers below. Share this video with everyone you know, because what is happening right now is not just a Middle East story. It is a story about the future of the entire world order. Subscribe if you have not already. Stay safe, stay informed, and I will see you on the next one.